Our first oration of the night bears the title, Marionette or Murderer, a defense of Pontius Pilate in the Crucifixion. Please welcome Sarah Deaver.
For our sake, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. This statement in the Nicene Creed has secured the legacy of Pontius Pilate in theological history. In Acts 3:13, Peter proclaims to the Jews, "The God of our fathers glorified his servant Jesus, whom you delivered over and denied in the presence of Pilate, when he had decided to release him." Though it appears that the scriptures grant blame to the Jewish leaders, Pontius Pilate will forever be remembered and therefore blamed by his presence in the Bible and the creeds. Christians have struggled for millennia to evaluate Pontius Pilate's blameworthiness. The Ethiopian Church praises Pilate as a saint, using the writings of Eusebius and Tertullian, while others condemn him as a demon withering in hell. Pontius Pilate is worth examining because of his influence in literary history. The Dictionary of Biblical Tradition in English Literature counts over 94 passages about Pilate in literary masterpieces such as Edmund Spenser's Faerie Queene and Shakespeare's Macbeth. References to Pilate washing his hands appear in at least 19 famous paintings and poems, and his question, "What is truth?" influenced writers like Francis Bacon, William Blake, and Aldous Huxley. Pontius Pilate was a Gentile who presided over Jesus' crucifixion, and his involvement demonstrates that both Jews and Gentiles participated in the killing of Christ. But Jesus was betrayed by his own people, the Jews, who manipulated Pilate as a means to an end. It was not the Jewish people, but their leaders who threatened Pilate to secure Jesus' execution and therefore bear reasonable blame for his crucifixion. I argue that Pontius Pilate does not bear reasonable blame in the crucifixion of Jesus because he lacked special revelation and only had general revelation. Special revelation is God revealing himself to people through his words, and general revelation is God revealing himself to all people through his creation. In John 19:11, Jesus tells Pontius Pilate, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of a greater sin." God gave power to both Pilate and the leaders, but he gave knowledge of himself and his will to the Jewish leaders, so they bear more guilt. Pontius Pilate did not know God's law and was therefore ignorant of Jesus' divine nature, so his sin is less egregious than that of the Jewish leaders, who were determined to have Jesus killed, even though they should have known that he was the Son of God. In the Garden of Eden, God specifically commanded Adam and Eve to not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Yet they disobeyed. This was a heinous sin because they were disobeying the direct words of God. When God gave the 10 Commandments to Moses and the nation of Israel at Mount Sinai, his people became responsible for following his law. He gave special revelation through specific commands to the Israelites, and they fell short. Just like he gave special revelation to Adam and Eve, and they fell short. He also gave special revelation to us as followers of Christ, and we fall short. The Jewish leaders who were under the law had a responsibility to follow it. But those who were outside of the people of God were not under his law. They only had general revelation, not special revelation. Romans 2:9 says there will be tribulation and distress for every human being who does evil, the Jew first and also the Greek. Those who were under the law had a greater responsibility to follow God and a greater consequence for disobeying him. Since Pilate did not have the law like the Jewish leaders, he would not have understood that Jesus was the Son of God, so he bears less responsibility for his sin. Many argue that Pontius Pilate should have known that condemning Jesus was sinful because of his wife's dream. Her vision of Jesus' innocence seems to suggest that Pilate did have special revelation and would therefore bear the same blame as the Jewish leaders. In Matthew 27:19, Pilate's wife Procula urges him to release Jesus because of a dream she had suffered. There is little detail about the dream in Matthew, but there are many theories of its cause. The Greek Orthodox and Coptic churches revere Procula as a saint because she warned Pilate against condemning Jesus. But the York Corpus Christi plays, performed in the 14th century, teach that Procula's dream was the devil, attempting to prevent salvation through Jesus' death. We should not assume that Procula's vision was the work of the devil, but we also can't assume that it was a vision from God. Though God has communicated through dreams, not all dreams are visions from him. If God had provided that vision to Procula to make Pilate aware of his sin, it would not have aligned with his purpose, which was the death of Jesus on the cross. Some may say that Pilate does bear guilt in the crucifixion for putting an innocent man to death, even if he did not understand him to be the Son of God. But Pilate was concerned with peace rather than protecting an innocent man. So it is reasonable that he would choose to condemn Jesus because of the threats of the Jewish leaders. It is difficult to defend a man who chose to condemn the innocent to death, but the historical context for the crucifixion shows justifiable reasons for his actions. By condemning Jesus, Pilate upheld Roman peace rather than justice, which was consistent with the expectations of a leader in his time in the Roman Empire. The purpose of a Roman prefect was to preserve peace. The Jewish leaders threatened to riot knowing that Pilate's priority was peace. In John 19:12, the Jewish leaders tell Pilate, "If you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar's. For anyone who calls himself a king opposes Caesar." If Pilate did not condemn Jesus, they threatened to accuse him of treason against Tiberius Caesar, for which Pilate would likely be executed. It is therefore reasonable that Pilate would choose to condemn one man, rather than allow the peace of Rome to be broken and risk his own execution. So how should we, as Christians, address the blameworthiness of Pontius Pilate in the crucifixion? This question requires a nuanced understanding of the historical context. It is true that Pilate wrongly condemned an innocent man, and we should not excuse him for this injustice. Pilate is guilty of killing the innocent, but the Jewish leaders are guilty of killing the Son of God. It was their responsibility to know who their Messiah was, so they must bear the primary blame for crucifying him. Christians must observe the entire historical picture and perhaps reflect on why so many have condemned Pilate for the crucifixion. Blaming Pilate may be an attempt to exonerate our own sinful hearts of this guilt. But we have all abandoned and betrayed our Creator in our hearts. Unlike Pilate, we each as believers have a personal relationship with Jesus and knowledge of his divine nature. Praise God that despite our deepest failures, our legacy is secured as children of God. Thank you.